The brand new forest green metal lunchbox was sitting in the back of my wife's car. Marilyn had asked me to bring in a case of bottled water she'd bought for the garden club. The lunchbox was in front of it, so I picked it up and set it on the bumper. It was plain painted metal, with a folding handle and an old-fashioned clasp. The kind of thing men at the plant used to carry years ago. This one was new. I opened it. Empty. Inside the lid was a small white sticker. One time. Marilyn came into the garage. "What's this?" "Oh, that's for the industrial history dinner." "What dinner?" "The Historical Society is helping with an event at the old Union Hall. They want decorations that look like things factory workers used." I was asked to pick up a sample. I pointed at the sticker. "What's one time?" "Probably the supplier's inventory mark. Then I noticed a round hole drilled through one side near the bottom. What kind of lunchbox has a hole in it?" She looked. "Maybe they're hanging something from it." "Through the bottom?" "Paul, I don't know. I'm not decorating it. I'm Paul Keating. I'm 68. Marilyn is 64, and we've been married 37 years. We live in Toledo, Ohio. I retired from maintenance at a commercial bakery 6 years ago. Marilyn retired from the county clerk's office 2 years after that. She volunteered with enough local groups that an industrial history dinner sounded believable. So I put the lunchbox on a garage shelf and forgot about it for 4 days. Marilyn says I have a problem throwing things away. That's not accurate. I have no problem throwing away things that are useless. About 10 years ago, she bought a new toaster because ours browned one side darker than the other. I took the old one apart, cleaned the contacts, and bent one spring back into place. It worked perfectly. So I returned the new toaster. Marilyn stared at me. "We can afford a toaster." "I know." "Then why did you return it?" "Because we already own a toaster." She still tells that story. Several days after I found the lunchbox, Marilyn asked me to help unload her car. There were 4 cardboard cartons in back. I opened the first. 6 forest green lunchboxes. The second held 6 more. 4 cartons. 24 lunchboxes. Every one had the same drilled hole. Every one had one time inside the lid. I thought they needed a sample. They changed the plan. To 24 samples? No, each table gets one. That almost worked. Later that evening, I noticed a flyer under a refrigerator magnet. Historic Trades Community Dinner. Old Union Hall. Saturday evening. At the bottom was a floor plan. 6 round tables. I counted again. 6. 24 boxes. Marilyn had said 1 per table. The next morning, the cartons were gone. On Thursday, she left for a volunteer meeting at the Union Hall. 20 minutes later, I noticed her reading glasses beside the sink. She needed them for anything smaller than a restaurant menu. I called. No answer. So I put the glasses in my pocket and drove over. The old Union Hall had meeting rooms upstairs and a long workshop area on the ground floor. I walked through the open side door. All 24 forest green lunch boxes were lined up on a steel-topped workbench, not on dinner tables, not arranged as decorations. Everyone was open. One lunchbox held a worn measuring tape. Another had a small wrench. A third held a cracked safety glasses case. There was a greased pencil and a short piece of metal angle. Nothing valuable. Nothing decorative. 3 volunteers were threading thin steel cable through the drilled holes. The cable ran into a metal rail fixed along the back of the workbench. The boxes could slide a little, but nobody could carry one away. So that explained the holes. It didn't explain the dinner. Marilyn was near the far end talking to a man in his 70s. Gray work shirt, heavy hands, reading glasses hanging from a cord around his neck. He looked familiar. Then I saw the last lunchbox. Inside was a short wooden-handled flathead screwdriver. One side of the handle had been sanded flat. I walked closer. There was no question. I'd done that back when I worked maintenance. Screwdrivers had a habit of rolling off machine housings. One afternoon, I'd gotten tired of chasing that one across the floor and sanded a flat spot into the wood. It looked ugly. It worked. I hadn't seen it in close to 30 years. Marilyn noticed me. Paul, I pointed. Where did you get that? The older man turned. Paul Keating. I knew the voice. Ray. Ray Mercer. He'd worked maintenance at Great Lakes Baking. Older than me by maybe 6 years. Different shifts most of the time, but I remembered him. Marilyn noticed my pocket. Are those my glasses? I handed them over. You left them home. Then I pointed at the screwdriver. Now, where did that come from? Ray picked it up. Plant. I know that. You left it there 30 years ago. Something like that. I looked down the workbench. 24 open lunchboxes. 24 old objects. No dinner decorations. I turned to Marilyn. What dinner is this for? She pressed her lips together. There isn't one. You made it up? Yes. The supplier mark? She glanced at one time. That too. I looked at Ray. He raised his hands. Don't put me in the middle of that part. What is this? He motioned toward the boxes. Open house display. For what? Things that were supposed to last one time. The old Union Hall hosted vocational programs several times a year. Apprenticeship information, trade demonstrations, workshop for adults considering new careers. Ray and several retired tradespeople had built a temporary display for the next open house. He opened one lunchbox. Inside was a worn metal bracket. Print shop, temporary paper guide, supposed to last a weekend. He moved to another, a wooden block. Cabinet shop, spacing jig after the real one broke. Another held a little shim. Machine shop, 3 shifts. I looked at one time. Ray said, everybody in maintenance knows the pattern. Right part isn't there. Somebody makes something temporary. Temporary works. And nobody touches it. Exactly. The lunch boxes were simply containers for examples of one use, one shift or 1 week fixes that lasted longer than anyone intended. The cable kept the boxes from walking away. I looked at Marilyn. So why couldn't you tell me? Because Ray wanted something from you. What? Ray pointed at my screwdriver. One of the fixes was yours. I laughed. I made thousands of fixes. This one stuck around. How long? 19 years. I stopped laughing. What machine? Line 4. Great Lakes Baking packaged sandwich bread and dinner rolls for grocery stores across Ohio and Michigan. Line 4 handled bag rolls for most of the years I worked there. I tried to think of anything I'd repaired that could possibly have survived 19 years. Motors changed. Belts changed. Sensors changed. Controls changed. What lasted 19 years. Ray tapped the screwdriver against his palm. You really don't remember? No. He set the screwdriver back inside the box. The one-time fix wasn't what ran 19 years. What was... Start with the repair. It happened 32 years earlier on an evening shift. Once Ray described the problem. I remembered the room before I remembered the repair. Great Lakes always smell warm on the production side. Bread, yeast, sweet dinner rolls. Conveyor noise filled everything. That night, there was flour dust on the wheels of my maintenance cart. Line 4 kept stopping. I knelt beside the packaging section while the plastic packaging material drifted crooked through a guide and missed its position at the photoelectric sensor. Nothing dangerous was happening. The sensor simply stopped the process when the material wasn't aligned. A small metal guide on its bracket had cracked. I checked the parts cage. The replacement bin was empty. The proper guide was due the next morning. At the maintenance bench, I found a short piece of approved food-safe plastic stock we already use around packaging equipment. I cut a small temporary guide from it, shaped the edge, smoothed it, then carried it back to line 4 with a handful of tools. The flathead screwdriver was one of them. 20 minutes later, the packaging tracked straight again. Ray showed me a photocopy of the maintenance ticket. My handwriting. Temp, 1 time only. Because the real part was coming in the morning. I said, "It came." So somebody replaced mine. No, Ray. They compared them. Yours was working. Supervisor said they'd swap it during weekend shutdown. And weekend shutdown got busy. That sounded right. 2 conveyors needed bearings. A drive motor was overheating. There was always something more urgent. So it stayed another week? Yep. Then somebody replaced it. Nope. I laughed. You're telling me a piece I shaped by hand stayed on that line 19 years? No. Then how long? Couple months. I looked at him. That's not 19 years. I know. Eventually, maintenance measured my temporary guide, checked the wear, and had a proper permanent version manufactured from approved material using the same basic geometry. Proper part. Proper dokumentation. Proper installation. That makes sense. I figured you'd approve. If something works, you don't throw it away just because the first version wasn't pretty. Marilyn gave Ray a look. He smiled. I've heard about the toaster. You told him about the toaster? It was relevant. It is never relevant. Ray was still smiling. I pointed at the screwdriver. So if the plastic guide lasted a couple months, what lasted 19 years? His smile disappeared. He reached beneath the workbench. This. Ray put an old red tag review sheet in front of me. Date, equipment, installer initials, review date. Then 3 boxes. Replace, keep, redesign. My initials were at the bottom. Piqué. I didn't make this. Not that version. He put another photocopy beside it. This was an old maintenance board note. My handwriting again. If it's temporary, date it. If it's still here Friday, somebody decides. Keep it right or replace it. I stared at it. Then I remembered. About a month after the line 4 repair, I was called to another packaging machine with a minor alignment problem. Somebody had installed a bent aluminum spacer beneath a guide bracket. It wasn't dangerous. It wasn't part of a safety system. And it worked. I crouched beside it with my flashlight. Who put this here? One mechanic looked down. Not me? How long's it been there? Ask second shift. I asked second shift. They didn't know either. No initials. No date. No maintenance ticket. Anyone could connect to it. It could have been there 3 days or 3 months. I remember standing up. Then who's deciding if it stays? Nobody answered. That was what irritated me, not the improvised spacer. The fact that temporary had stopped meaning anything. I walked into the maintenance room, pulled the cap off a black marker, and wrote on the board, if it's temporary, date it. Then the rest. I even underlined Friday. I remember now. I said. Ray tapped the red form. Dawson cleaned up your language. That probably took a while. He added redesign. That was smart. My line 4 guide became one of the first tests. They dated it, measured it, checked the wear, compared it with the proper replacement. Then they selected redesign. Instead of keeping the hand-cut plastic forever, they used the useful geometry to manufacture an approved permanent part. After that, temporary non-safety critical repairs were dated and reviewed. Some were replaced. Some were formally approved. Some were redesigned. The red tag review system stayed in use at Great Lakes for 19 years. I looked at Ray. So the guide didn't last 19 years. No, the review system did. Yep. And you're calling that my fix? I call it your complaint. That sounds more accurate. I looked again at the form. I spent 30 years complaining about paperwork, and now you're telling me one of the forms was my fault? Pretty much. I pointed at him. You've been waiting to say that. Couple weeks. Even Marilyn laughed. I didn't. Then I did. Ray had kept my old screwdriver because I bought a new set and left the old one in a shared drawer. When the plant eventually closed, he recognized a flat spot while tools were being sorted. Then I looked at Marilyn. And you knew this? Some of it. Ray called me about 6 weeks ago. He wanted you to give him one sentence about the original repair. Why didn't he call me? He did. Ray nodded toward her. I asked whether you participate. She said she'd talk to you. Marilyn didn't dodge it. I thought you'd say no before you saw the display. So you invented a dinner. Yes. And 24 table decorations. Yes. And the supplier, Mark? I made that up. You could have just asked. I could have. Why didn't you? Because I could already hear you saying, it's a bunch of old guys putting junk in lunch boxes. I looked down the workbench. Wrench. Pencil. Broken ruler. My screwdriver. That'd sound like me. It sound exactly like you. That doesn't make the lie okay. No. Ray waited a moment. Now that you're here, you want to give me the sentence? No. Fair enough. Then I saw the card plan for my lunchbox. Temporary line guide, 19 years. That isn't right. Ray looked over. What isn't? The temporary guide lasted a couple months. The review system lasted 19 years. He handed me a pencil. What do you want to say? I wrote, temporary guide, 1 shift. Under it, review system, 19 years. Ray read both. That's less exciting. It's accurate. The open house was held Saturday. I gave no speech. There was no photograph, award, or sign calling me an inventor. My lunchbox sat 17th in the row because that's where there had been room when they attached the cable. One of 24. Visitors opened it, looked at the screwdriver, the manufacturer guide, the copied review sheet, and my 2 labels, then moved on like they did with the others. Marilyn worked the registration table. At one point, she brought me coffee. You still mad? Yes. All right. I took the cup. Not as much. That isn't the same as not mad. I know. Near closing time, Ray asked me to help take down the display. That was more useful than standing around talking. We unclipped the cable and stacked the green lunchboxes in cartons. I checked every drilled hole for sharp edges before packing them. Ray noticed. You know we're probably never using these again. They still shouldn't have sharp edges. He nodded. There's Paul. We reached box 17. Mine. I opened it. The screwdriver lay diagonally across the bottom beside the manufacturer guide, the copied review sheet, and the 2 labels. Ray pulled the steel cable back through the drilled hole. Then he picked up the screwdriver. You want this back? I took it. The wooden handle was worn smooth. I turned it once. There was a flat section I'd sanded decades earlier, so the tool wouldn't roll off machine housings. I handed it back. No, put it back in the drawer. Ray looked at me. There isn't a drawer anymore. I glanced around the old Union Hall. The workbench was nearly empty now. I held out the lunchbox, then leaving the box. Ray put the screwdriver inside. I set the manufacturer guide beside it, then the review sheet, then the 2 factual labels. Inside the lid, the white sticker still read, 1 time. I closed the lunchbox. The old metal clasp was stiff. I pushed it. It didn't catch. I pressed the lid down with my palm. Tried again. Clack.